The aroma, the end of the world. The room was drowning in a dense purple gloom, cleaved only here and there by narrow bands of streetlight slicing through the blinds like scalpel blades. The air in the apartment was heavy, saturated with the smoke of her long, thin cigarettes and something else, a scent that gave me no peace. It was the suffocating aroma of overripe vegetation, broken by a metallic, tart note of crushed forest berries. This scent settled on the tongue like dust, leaving behind the taste of an approaching storm in tarnished silver. She sat at the vanity, her back to me. Her spine, bared by the deep plunge of her black silk dress, was white as alabaster, marked only by the two distinct lines of her shoulder blades trembling with every movement of her hand. In her fingers she held a silver comb, an object with teeth so sharp they seemed to lacerate the air itself. I felt a tension in my own hands. In the right pocket of my coat, my thumb nervously rolled the old brass wreck of a lighter. It was empty, scraped down to the bare metal, but it served as my anchor, the only proof that I still belonged to the banal human world. "Did you come here to watch or to beg?" she asked without turning her head. Her voice was like the strike of a velvet whip, soft, carrying the promise of pain. A sudden white noise rose in my head. It wasn't a voice, it was a tingling at the base of my skull, a deep unease. "Run," something whispered beneath my skin, carrying the scent of stale earth. "She isn't looking at you, she's looking through you like through dirty glass." I silenced it, clenching my fist around the brass lighter so tightly that the metal dug into my flesh. "I came for what you promised me," I replied, and my pride, that damned shining armor I had worn for years, began to groan under the weight of her silence. She turned slowly. She was beautiful in a way that evoked primal terror, beautiful like the edge of an abyss just before the jump. Around her neck gleamed a black velvet choker bearing an obsidian star. The stone seemed to pulsate in time with the beating of her heart. She approached and touched my cheek. Her fingers were ice cold. "You wanted to see what is hidden beneath the tissue of the world, but you forgot the price, my little, proud conqueror." She took my hand and placed a porous, organic artifact into it, resembling a fossilized heart smelling of burnt meat and ozone. I felt its structure digging into my skin. The heat radiating from it began to crawl up my arm. "Do not let go," screamed one of my internal shadows, full of animalistic hunger. "Feel it. This is life." Another quieter voice begged for a return to normalcy. "Weep," she commanded. And I wept, but my tears were black, viscous, and smelled of bitter herbs. I watched them drip onto her dress, eating into the fabric. I had won. I possessed the key to a different perception. But looking at her, I understood that it was she who had just installed the first piece of her intricate, dark puzzle inside me. The city beneath us pulsated like an open stubble field, where concrete spires grew instead of stalks, irritating the bellies of leaden clouds. We stood on the roof of her penthouse. The moonlight was corpse pale, casting shadows that seemed too long, too autonomous. "Look at them," she tossed out carelessly, pointing at the ant-like movement of lights below. "Each of them believes they have a choice." My pride was now nothing more than a pile of shattered glass. I had become addicted to her presence. An incessant cacophony of my mind's attributes raged in my head, fighting to regain control. "Feel how her skin tightens beneath your touch," suggested one, charged with aggressive lust. I pulled the artifact she had forced upon me out of my pocket. It had changed. It was no longer a porous stone. Under the heat of my body, it had hardened and smoothed out, taking the form of a silvery, nearly transparent sphere. To the touch, it resembled a bone that had spent an eternity in an icy stream. The sphere pulsated in rhythm with my pulse. "Why me?" I asked. She turned sharply. Her violet eyes now burned with an inner light. "Because you, unlike them, are ready for total disintegration. You are strong, but your strength rests on a foundation of sand. That makes you the perfect material to build something enduring." She grabbed my wrists. Her grip was inhuman. Then I saw it, behind her back, in the air. Tears began to form in the very fabric of reality. A terrifying silence fell. I felt her essence pouring into me. My fears, my memories, the grip of the brass lighter in my other pocket, all of it was becoming gray, irrelevant. Suddenly, the apartment beneath us shuddered. The windows shattered simultaneously, exploding into fountains of diamond dust. In the darkness, I could only see her star in her eyes, which were no longer violet, but black as the abyss into which we were currently falling. The leathery crack of bending steel tore me from my stupor. The apartment doors had been reduced to the mere idea of an obstacle, curling in on themselves like burning parchment. A pulsating, livid tissue throbbed in the breach. "Go," she cast out in a dry whisper of ash. My body reacted autonomously. A cacophony erupted in my head. "Run, you cowardly piece of carrion!" roared my internal commander, while another hummed a lullaby of oblivion. I began sprinting down the fire escape. On the 20th floor, the neon lights reflected on my hands. I saw black bands violently writhing beneath my translucent skin, trying to break out. The silver sphere I still clutched began to burn. I spilled onto the street. The city's architecture bent unnaturally, spatial dimensions contracting in geometric madness. I ran toward the waterfront, driven by institutionalized trauma. I reached the edge of the pier. The water in the river was thick, resembling a spilled mercury. "Enough!" I wheezed, raising my hand to hurl the silver sphere into the depths. Behind my back, out of the fog and the smell of burning herbs, she emerged. Space had simply folded to place her right behind me. "Escape is only another form of return," she said. "You cannot outrun the system of which you have become the core." I looked at the water's surface. In my reflection, I saw a figure with eyes like black holes. The river began to recede. From the bottom emerged a massive structure of bone and metal. At that moment, the silver sphere in my hand pierced my epidermis, sinking directly into my sternum and grafting onto my nervous system. I was no longer a fugitive. I was a living key. The light spilling from the fractures in the sky was sterile and merciless. The sphere embedded in my chest pulsated, consuming me from the inside out. I decided to fight, to endure the brutal liturgy of bidding farewell to myself. I tried to rip the sphere from my flesh. The pain was dense. My fingers slipped on metal coated in black, oily fluid. "It's just a hallucination," I rasped, while a voice in my head laughed hysterically at my efforts. I flew into a fury. I lunged at the woman smelling of tart berries. My hands tightened around her throat, burning against her unnaturally hot skin. I wanted to crush her windpipe, but in reality, I was only strangling the last remnants of my own resistance. I fell to my knees before the emerging structure. "Take my memory, but give me peace." The silver sphere flared, and I felt my most painful memories being sucked through my skin. Sat on the concrete. My bones were turning to sponge. She sat beside me, now smelling of fading leaves. "You are almost gone," she murmured. I raised my head. My skin had turned black, gleaming like obsidian. I ceased fighting outwardly. I stood up, letting her think I was broken. My submission was tactical. I laid down my spiritual weapons to conceal what I was about to do physically. I became part of the mechanism. "I am ready," I lied perfectly. The world vibrated. Inside me, deep beneath the layer of submissive obsidian skin, smoldered the last scrap of human wretchedness, ice-cold hatred. I realized that to destroy the machine god, one must throw sand into its gears. "Look at this beauty," she whispered, placing a hand on my chest, right where the sphere had fused with my sternum. "This is the order you sought." "You are right," I replied calmly, "but you forgot what happens to the key when the lock is eaten by rust." With a fluid motion, I pulled the old brass wreck of my lighter from my pocket, the tool of my addiction, the purest symbol of human frailty and downfall. I rammed the brass object directly into the organic crevice surrounding the silver sphere in my chest. I introduced a virus of ordinary human wretchedness into the perfect system. The sphere howled. I felt 1,000 glowing knives slice me from the inside. An ontological allergy occurred. The flawless configuration ruptured. I became a lens focusing the system's recoil straight back at its creator. There was a blinding white silence. I watched the woman's alabaster skin crack like porcelain, her dress turning to ash, her star shattered into dust. When the light faded, I lay on the waterfront. The inhuman architecture of the sky had receded. My skin returned to its natural hue, though corpse pale and covered in scars. Only a dead, scarred crater remained where the sphere had been. I had won. Then a voice spoke in my head, singular, sounding exactly like hers. That was spectacular, my dear, but since the system has fallen and my body has burned, I have nowhere else to go. I felt my hand in a slow, involuntary motion adjust the collar of my coat, her gesture. The stratagem had bound us forever. I had locked her inside my own skull. The silence following the victory was merely the universe holding its breath. The water in the river bulged, forming a massive dome. The mounting pressure caused dark ichor to seep from my ears. From the depths emerged the stench of eons in wet stone. That which rose from the waters had no face, only an infinite number of eyes in the folds of its greenish-black skin. Tentacles began to coil around the city's foundations, a cosmic entity next to which human geometry was a delusion. "Do you see?" Her voice in my skull shifted into a deafening, inhuman register. I was merely a whimper before what has just opened its eyes. I fell to my knees. My stratagem with the lighter. I was a worm celebrating the death of a spider while the house around us burned. The entity felt no hatred, only an absolute, crushing indifference. The scar on my chest split open, glowing with a sickly green radiance. My sabotage hadn't saved the world. It had destroyed the fuse. I had removed the middleman, paving a direct path into our reality for the Ancient One. My body contorted in directions unknown to anatomy, becoming a living antenna for the deity. My eyes exploded, replaced by black tumors through which I beheld the mechanistic abyss. "The feast begins," she whispered through my own thoughts. I smiled with her lips. My deformed hand pulled the crushed wreck of the lighter from the wound and crumbled it into dust. I ceased being a man with problems. I became the first priest of the new ultimate silence, swallowed by a maw that had no bottom.